All right, we'll say good morning. Good morning. Let us begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning. Sure to thank our Talmud Torah sponsor for Tafshin Pei Hey, the year 5785. Our annual Talmud Torah sponsor, the Tilson Family of Eretz Yisrael, for dedicating all the Sherman Drushos this year. In the zechus of finishing Mesechus Basra and Am Yisroel beginning the adventure of Mesechus Sanhedrin, we should be zocheh Am Yisroel to complete this Mesech and many other Mesechos together with Tova U'Mitzlachos. Our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Kislev, Josh and Becca Friedman, the creation of the Yahrzeit of Josh, his father, Yisroel Yehuda, HaRav Chaim Rephael, Zichron Livracha, Sammy and Malka Esterson, in memory of their parents, Yitzchak Laib ben Aharon HaKohen, Sarah Rachel bas Baruch Avraham, Hinda bas Henech Efrayim, and in memory of their dear friend, brave soldier, beloved husband, father, and skilled physiotherapist, Naftali Gordon, Naftali Yonah Hy, ben Beatrice, Miriam, and Daniel Yigal, whose Yahrzeit is today, who was killed by sniper fire while in his tank in Gaza. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, his neshama, together with all of the other neshamas, together with all of the neshamas of Kedoshi Yisrael, should Emir Hashem have an aliyah, should have a lichtig gan Eden, their family should have a nechama. All of those who need a refuah should have one together with Kol Cholei Yisrael. Kadosh Baruch Hu should Emir Hashem bring home our hostages b'shalom and b'karov and allow our holy soldiers to be successful b'chol ma'aseh yedehem. But so with that, let us begin. Today's daf is daf ches. But you'd have absolutely no idea that is true based on where we're starting today. But that's Baruch Hashem, it's okay. We have plenty of time, and if you'll notice, if you peeked ahead, you'll see a lot of shorter dafin coming forward, so we are going to be absolutely fine. So we're picking up on Zayin Beis 7b, and we left off the Beinesiya. In the wide lines, it is 2, 4, 6, 8, about 9 lines down into the wide lines. No, not up from the bottom, right? But into the wide lines from the top. The Beinesiya, Ukmudina de Lohava Gomer. So we'll say it happened one time that the Nasi, right, the office of the Nasi, appointed a judge who was unqualified. So they said to Yehuda, who was the Turgaman. Remember, you're going to say the Turgaman was this individual whose job it was to take the more complicating teachings of the Rebbe and to break them down into more distilled, more understandable pieces for the masses. So they said over to Yehuda Bar Nachmani, who was the Turgaman of Reish Lakish, Kum alei ba'amora. Go ahead and go do me a favor and be a Turgaman, be an Amora, be a spokesman for this judge. Come gachin alei v'lo amar lei v'lo midi. Okay, so Yehuda Bar Nachmani goes over to this judge. He kind of, bends down over the judge to hear what the judge is saying, so that then he'll give over the judge's wisdom to the masses. And the judge was totally silent, meaning this judge was ignorant. So the house of the Nasi had appointed an ignorant judge. The Gemara says, Amar Levlami di Pasach va'amar si Yehuda Bar Nachmani said, Havi Omer le'eit sakitza uri le'evan domim hu yore hine hu tafos zahav v'kesev v'chol ruach ein b'kirbo. So, unfortunately, again, Yehuda Bar Nachmani compared this individual to a piece of wood, right? It's like telling a piece of wood to wake up, telling a sleeping stone to wake up. So he was lamenting the fact that, unfortunately, the house of the Nasi had appointed an ignorant judge. And furthermore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will exact retribution from those who use judicial appointments to appoint people who are not really fit to sit on the judiciary. Shnei Amar, Vashem Mehechal Kacho, Has Mipanav Kalaretz. Amrish Lakish, Kalaman Dayon, Alatzi Vashena Hagun. Whoever goes ahead and appoints a judge who is not fit, who is not worthy of office, Kilunota Ashera Yisroel. It's as if he plants an Ashera tree. Right now, remember again, an Ashera is a tree used for idolatry. So you go ahead and you appoint a judge who is not really fit for office. So this is like someone who appoints an Asherah tree. Shnei Amar, Shoftim v'shotrim titin l'cha. The pasuk says, make shoftim and shotrim for yourself. V'samech lei lo sita Asherah v'chol eitz. And then so there's a juxtaposition of psukim. It says, create judges, right? Create judges and enforcers. And then it says, don't plant an Asherah tree. But Ravashi, so I'll say, so again, you see, it's interesting over here that appointing a judge who is not fit for office is a perversion of justice and that perversion of justice is tantamount to the worship of idolatry. Obviously, a very intense pasuk, a very intense idea. Furthermore, it's one thing to appoint ignorant judges because there's no other pool to choose from. That's bad. That's like planting an Asherah. But choosing an ignorant judge where there are Talmidei Chachamim, there are Torah scholars who are available, that's like planting an Asherah next to the Mizbeach. Ksiv, because the pasuk says, "Shneimar Eitzel Mizbeach Hashem Elokecha." Says, don't plant an Asherah tree next to the Mizbeach of Hashem your God. So Ksiv, on one hand, the pasuk says, "Lo sasun iti Elohei Kesef ve'Elohei Zav." So the pasuk says, "Do not make gods of gold or gods of silver, gods of gold." So the Gemara says, "Elohei Kesef Elohei Zav u'Lo Avdi Hade Eitz Shari." So what? You can't make idols out of gold or silver, but you can make idols out of wood. Obviously not. So why does it only say gold or silver? Ravashi, Eloha haba b'shvil Kesef ve'Eloha haba b'shvil Zav. It's talking about Eloha. I will say sometimes when the Torah refers to a judge, is as an Elokim. As Elohim. Right? It refers to the judge, uses almost like the same description. So what does it mean? Don't make gods of gold, don't make gods of silver. Don't appoint judges who are motivated by money. Okay, Rav. Kava'asi the Beidina. This is very profound. Rav was a dayan. When Rav would get up in the morning and he would go to Beis Din, Amarha, he would say as follows. Bira'os nafshe liktala nafik. Essentially, I'm going out to be judged for death. Now, what does this mean? In other words, what he was saying is he recognized the awesome responsibility that he had as a judge, and that if he got it wrong, right, or somehow again he corrupted the judgment, he, as we saw in yesterday's daf, he would bear the responsibility for that. So when he would go out of his house for the day, he would feel that weight. Furthermore, v'tzavi beisi lesu avid. And again, here I'm occupied with judging cases. I'm not taking care of the needs of my house. In other words, we're going to see what he was saying essentially is sometimes being a dayan, or sometimes even being, devoting oneself to the needs of Klal Yisrael could be a thankless job. Right? Because again, you hear all the complaints, you hear all the problems, but lav dafka that you get the sheyichyeh for. It's here, I'm neglecting the needs of my family. Rav was saying, I'm devoting myself to the klal. And again, what am I really getting? Furthermore, he's saying, I don't get paid for this. Now, I will say, this is an interesting discussion which we'll discuss. What he was saying essentially was that here, it's not like, okay, it's one thing to have a lot of stress and at least make a lot of money. Right? But if you're going to have a lot of stress and not make a lot of money, so again, you have less quality of life and less money also. So Rav was saying, I have all this responsibility. Don't get really paid a lot of money for it. Don't have the opportunity. It's because it's all consuming. So I'm so much more caught up in the needs of the klal than in the needs of my family. He says, Ulavai shetebia kiyetzia. And halavai, ultimately, again, I should come home like the way I left the house. Now, what does this mean? So Rashi says over here, very profound. Rashi says, Ulavai shetebia she'achzor lebeisi kiyetzia she'atzasa mi beisi below chet. I left the house in the morning and I was free of sin. I should at least be able to come home free of sin as well. Now, in that context, what he was worried about was the corruption of judgment. So he's worried again. I left my house shut up for work, so to speak, and I hadn't done anything wrong. I hope that over the course of the day, I don't chas v'shalom corrupt judgment. Incredible. So the Gemara says, "Kiavi chazi amavua desafia basrei." So this is incredible. When Rav would see a group of Talmidim following him, so we'll say, so sometimes a person sees a group of Talmidim following him, so it could go to his head a little bit, right? He can go ahead and he perhaps could become a little bit of a Baal Gaiba. So when Rav would see this, Amar, Im Ya'ala l'shamayim shio, ki galalo l'netzach yovas. He would say this pasuk. He would say this pasuk to himself to remind him, pasuk from Eov. Even if someone's stature goes up to the heavens, he may only be remembered as a piece of excrement. Okay, that's a pretty humbling pasuk. The idea of here being, right, that just because the world thinks you're great, don't get carried away with yourself. So the Marzutra Chasida came Makaseh b'Shabbat the Regla. Marzutra Chasida, when the students would lift him up on their shoulders on the Shabbos of the Regel. So remember again, the Shabbos of the Regel was the 30 days prior to a particular Yom Tov, there's an obligation to learn the halachas of that Yom Tov. So that Shabbos, there would be like a big gathering for Torah learning. So they would lift up marzutra on their shoulders. And I will say, it's not what you think. It's not like a hoisting someone out, like a celebratory thing. It was marzutra was older, and that's the day they would carry him. As they would carry him. Rashi points out in the Kasilu Nosin Osana La Kaseh Shei Zekinim Kenim Yecholim Lorots. Says interesting. So in other words, so he was old, and also in order not to go ahead and make everyone stand up, sit down, they would take him to his place very quickly. But again, as we see, it was a tremendous display of honor. So the Gemara says, Amar Hachi, he would say as follows: Kilo li olam chosem v'nezer ladar vadar. So ultimately, again, wealth does not last forever, nor is the crown passed down for generations. So I'll say the idea over here is that when these individuals would experience moments of incredible kavod, incredible honor, they would make sure to keep themselves grounded and humbled. Very profound. Darish bar kafro, or Darish bar kafro, I should say. We'll say from where do we know this concept that the rabbis often say? Have a mesunim bedin. So it's very profound. Be deliberate in judgment. Now, what does it mean to be deliberate in judgment? Look at Rashi. Now, again, for the judge, what it means as follows is don't just deliver like a rash, like a hasty judgment, but rather take your time in deliberation and take your time in reaching a proper conclusion. So from where do we know this concept of having the sunim bedin? Dichsev lo sa'ale b'malos, because the pasuk says on one hand, do not ascend when going up to the mizbeach. The mizbeach doesn't have steps, but rather again the mizbeach, the altar has a ramp. So the pasuk says, do not ascend on steps, go up a ramp. The samichlei ve'ela hamishpatin, and then it says afterwards the juxtaposition of psukim is go up the ramp, right? And these are the laws that you will place before them. What's the juxtaposition? So remember again, a ramp is a gradual ascent. It's a gradual ascent. So the juxtaposition of the gradual ascent of the ramp to the obligation to establish judges says, judges, be gradual, be deliberate in the way that you adjudicate your cases. Take your time in coming to your conclusions and don't be hasty in your judgment. I will say, so just understand, but also this also appears in Pirkei Avos. But just to understand, remember, whenever we speak about, the Maharal in Pirkei Avos talks about this, that whenever you see a Gemara, or in this case a Gemara, he's talking about the Pirkei Avos, Mishnayos that speak about judges and how they're supposed to adjudicate. So remember, again, I will say, all of us are judges. All of us are judges, right? And we have our own personal courtroom. And anyone who walks into my Dalet Amos, anyone who walks into my personal space, my close proximity, has just entered into my courtroom, and we judge people every single day. We like to say that we're not judgmental. We give everyone the benefit of the doubt. It's a lie. We're incredibly judgmental. Right? All of us. It's almost like it's built into us. It's Baruch who made us. Now you could fight against it. You could resist it. You could try to change it. But the default is to be profoundly and incredibly and overwhelmingly judgmental. And it's important to acknowledge this, because anyone who says they're not is fooling themselves. But that's why if you're going to be judgmental, you're going to pass judgment on someone, be deliberate. Be deliberate. Have a misunim bedin. Before you go ahead and you pass that verdict on someone, take the time to make sure that the judgment you're passing is really the correct judgment. Gemara goes back to Rabbi Eliezer. How do you know that a judge should literally, again, not go ahead and walk on the heads of Klal Yisrael? Now, what does this mean? If you look at Rashi says, Kishahayat Torguman Doresh, Hayat Sibor Yoshin La'aretz, Vamafsia Benehen, Lelech Vleshi Bimkomo, Nirakim Afsia Rishon. So sometimes the way that it would work was, like the Talmidim would be sitting on the ground, right? And the Rebbe would be sitting like on a chair in a higher spot. So if the Rebbe came late, or the Dayan came late, he would have to walk through the seated crowd. And what does it look like? It looks like he's walking on their heads. Which Abba is another way of saying, how do we know that let me finish up. So the Gemara says, Shne'emar lo sala b'malo, so samachlei ela mishpatim asher tasim, asher tasim. What the pasuk says, right, don't walk on steps. to the Mizbeach, but rather go ahead and walk on the ramp. And then it says afterwards, Ve'ela Mishpatim. So the Gemara says, Asher Talamdim. Why does it say Eila Mishpatim Asher Tasim? Why does it say these are the laws that you shall place? It should say these are the laws that you shall teach them. Elu Klei HaDayonim. So there's a new drasha. So I'll say, we'll get to this in just a second. But I will say, but it's very profound. What does it mean? What does it mean when it says the Rebbe shouldn't, or the Dayan shouldn't trample on the head? So what it means is, I'll say essentially, that the Rebbe or the Dayan has to make sure to always be on time. To always be on time. Right? If the Rebbe or the Dayan is late, what ends up happening? Right? The Talmidim are there, they're already seated, and when the Rebbe walks in, it looks like he's going ahead and walking on their heads. So essentially what it's saying is timeliness. The Rebbe should be on time, which I will say is such a profound idea. What's really the deeper lesson in this? Anytime you want someone to do something, doesn't matter what you say. The best way to go in and get someone to do something is model the right behavior. So if the Rebbe wants the Talmidim to be on time, then ultimately what? The Rebbe's got to show up on time. So saying be on time, but the Rebbe himself to be late doesn't mean anything. Such a yisod in parenting, we've spoken about this so many times, such a yisod in parenting as well. If you want to convey something to your children, it matters very little what you do, and what truly matters matters very little what you say. It tremendously matters what you do. Model the right things for your kids, and you have a chance of potential emulation. Just talk about it. Chances are they're hearing very little of what it is that you say. Tremendous Gemara. Anyway, the Gemara says, so this refers ultimately against the utensils of the judges. Rav Huna, listen to this. Rav Huna, when he went out, Kavanafek Ladina, is great. When Rav Huna went to work, right, he went out to adjudicate the case. So he said as follows. He says, I'm sorry. Rav Huna kevinafek ledina amar hachi afikuli mani chanisai. Give me the tools of my trade. What are the tools of my trade? Makel, a staff, and now she points out over here, the staff was there to go ahead and give rabbinic malchus, rabbinic lashes. Ritzua, give me a strap that was there to administer biblical malchus. Shofra, give me my shofar, that was to excommunicate someone. And sandala, a shoe for chalitza. These were the tools of the trade, right? A staff to hit people for malchus, right? Ultimately, again, a strap to go ahead and hit people for biblical malchus, a shofar to excommunicate people, and a sandal, a shoe for chalitza. Incredible. And I will command your judges at that time. Am Rabbi Yochanan kineged makel resua teizaris. So I'll say what that means is that telling the judge, make sure before you use the staff and the strap that you are very careful. Otherwise we'll get this will come when we get to Maseches Makas, that before you administer lashes, that halacha l'maisa, person has to make sure to evaluate what the person is capable of receiving. Okay, Shema ben acheichem u'shvatatem. So literally again, listen to your brethren and then judge. Am Rabbi Chanina ashar bezdin shlo yishma divrei baldin kodim shevo baldin chavero. This teaches us that the judge should not listen to the claims of one litigant before the other one goes ahead and shows up in Beis Din. This is very important. That phrase, shamoa bein acheichem, listen between your brothers, means that both litigants need to be present before the judges begin to listen to either one of them. And this also teaches us that one litigant shouldn't begin to advance his arguments before the other litigant shows up in Beis Din. So it's like this double prohibition. The judge should not listen to either litigant before both are present, and one litigant shouldn't begin to advance his arguments before someone else shows up. Kari beinami shamea ben acheichem. Good. Rav Kana said from here, Milotisa lo sasi, ushvatatem tzedek, you shall adjudicate justice. Amrish Lakish, tzedek es hadin, v'achaka chatrehu. Make sure ultimately, again, what you're about to say is just, and then only afterwards should you articulate it. Bein ish ubein achiv. So the pasuk says again, what does that mean? Amar Yehuda afilu bein bayis la'aliyah. So both says it's very profound. When adjudicating a case, the Gemara says, make sure to adjudicate it appropriately. And don't just go ahead and content yourself with a simple judgment. For example, so the Gemara's example of here is, Reuven and Shimon are brothers, they inherited an estate from their father, from Yaakov. So what happens? That Yaakov left behind a 2-story house. So the judge could easily say, okay, Reuven, you get the first story, first floor, and Shimon, you get the second floor, Shalom Yisroel. No, don't adjudicate like that, but rather, again, you have to look at what's the value. What is everyone getting? Are they getting equal amounts? In other words, it is so easy just to content yourself with hasty judgment, because, again, it's simple, it's easy, it's straightforward. Don't do that. Make sure you're doing a proper job. The Gemara goes weiter. Ben Gera, Am Rav Yehuda, Afilu ben Tanor likirayim. Even again, when dividing up between Tanor Kirayim and different types of ovens, so even when dividing up amongst two different types of ovens, make sure that again you're doing a good job. Fine. So the Gemara says, Lo Sakiru Panav Mishpat. Am Rav Yehuda, Amar. Supposed to say, it's also such a profound idea. If you're going to do something, do it right. Right? In other words, if you're taking on the responsibility to be a judge, take the responsibility seriously and perform your tasks with diligence, which of course becomes such a profound metaphor for life. I will say, how many times do we take on responsibilities and we do things, and what happens? We do it 75% of the way. Now, obviously 75% is better than zero, but you know what's better than 75%? It's 100%. Or take pride of ownership. Take pride in what it is that you're going to do. And if you're going to do it, then give yourself over to it. But don't do it half-hearted, right? Don't do it half-baked, because at the end of the day, the feeling of accomplishment is not there, and the final product reflects your lack of commitment. And this is true whatever you're going to do in life. So the Gemara says, you're going to be a judge? Okay. No one tells you have to be a judge. But if you're going to do it, give it 100% and do it right. So incredible. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, lo takireu. Fine. So lo sakireu panam mishpat. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, lo sakireu. Belazar Omer, lo sinkareu. This is interesting. What Rabbi Yehuda says, what it means is, if there are two litigants and one of them you have a very warm relationship with, don't give someone preferential treatment. Rabbi Yehuda says, if there are two litigants and one of them you really don't like, don't go ahead and mistreat the one you don't like. Okay? So listen to this. One time the host, right, Rav, I guess was a tenant, and one time his host showed up in his beis din to adjudicate the case. Amar lo, lav ush bezichni at. So the host goes over to Rav. Hey Rav, don't you live by me, right? Don't you live by me? Amar lo, and Rav said, yes, I do. Amar le dina isli. To which the landlord said, well, you know what? I'm here because I have a din Torah. Amar le, top of Ches, 8a. So Rav said, pasul lachal adina. I said, oh, so sorry. Now that you mentioned the fact that I am your tenant, I cannot adjudicate your case, right? I have a conflict. But don't worry. Amar le Rav Kahana, puk daine. So, but Rav said to Rav Kahana, don't worry. Rav Kahana, you adjudicate this case. Chazei to have a koim bay. But nevertheless, even after Rav Kahana took over the case, Rav Kahana saw that the landlord was kind of like chumming up to Rav, right? He was trying to curry some favor with Rav. Amrabei, itzaisa tzaisa. So Rav Kahana was a little bit sharp with the guy because he felt the guy was trying to manipulate the outcome of the case. So he says to the guy, listen, buddy, if you listen to my psak, good, we're in good shape. V'ilo, but if you don't listen to my psak, mafikta lecha Rav me'orach, I will remove Rav from your ear, which Rashi says was an expression ultimately of excommunication. All right, 4 lines out from the top, Chasam Ad Aleph. Kikatan kigadol tishmun. Suppose say you shall hear big and small. You shall hear. Amar Yish Lakish shehichaviv alecha din shal pruta kedin shal me'amana. So ultimately, again, this is a warning to the judge that a judgment or a case of a pruta should be just as important to you as a case of 100 mana. In other words, that don't give more attention to a $10 case than you would to an $1,000 case. So what does this mean? If it means that the judge should really make sure that he's issuing a correct psak, so that's kind of obvious. Ella lak dume. Rather, what does it mean? It means ultimately, again, for precedence. In other words, we'll say the way it works in the Jewish court system is what order is your case heard? By when you arrived in Beis Din that morning. There's an order. Whoever shows up first gets heard first. So again, let's say Reuven and Shimon show up and their claim is for $100, and then Levi and Yehuda show up and their claim is for $1 million. You might have thought that you should hear the $1 million case before the $1,000 case. Kamash Molo, no. That's not how it works. So the Gemara says, what does it mean when it says literally again, do not be fearful in the face of other person? So Gemara says, Ki mishpat le'elokimhu. Amar Rabbi Chanina, Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Lo dayan l'risham shenotlin mizeh mamon v'nostim l'zeh shelo kidin, ela shematrichen osi lahachzir mamon l'baylo. So also this is so profound. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, what does it mean when it says that judgment belongs to God? HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, it's bad enough that unscrupulous judges award money to the wrong person. But then what do? They make me have to take back the money and give it back to the right person. So they'll say, isn't this absolutely profound? Baruch Hu at the end of the day will make sure that all money gets to where it needs to be. You can't cheat the system. And even if you cheat the system, it's only temporary cheating. Right? So a judge could go in and rule erroneously, or it's just not even about a judge. A person could cheat, a person could steal in life, and you could perhaps benefit temporarily, episodically. But just know at the end of the day, the Ribono Shel Olam always writes the system and puts the money back where it needs to be. Incredible. So Moshe, listen to this. So Moshe Rabbeinu said, when dealing with the judicial system, Moshe Rabbeinu said, whatever is complicated. Now, just to give you context, right? So remember, the pasuk was, this is in Sefer Devarim, where Moshe Rabbeinu was reflecting on the creation of a judicial system. So they created a whole hierarchy of judges, and then Moshe Rabbeinu said, but whatever is very complicated, bring to me. Bring to me. So interestingly enough, the Gemara understands over here that this was gaiva, this was arrogance on the part of Moshe Rabbeinu. The Gemara faults him. Moshe Rabbeinu was punished for this display of arrogance, saying, whatever's complicated, bring to me. Chazal will say, what happened? When it came to Benos Tzlafchad, remember again, the daughters of Tzlafchad, their father died, Tzlafchad died, he only had daughters, and no one ever knew this case never came up before about what to do with inheritance. Remember again, when you only have daughters. We just did this, we spent a lot of time on this in Baal Basra. Right? So what do you do in such an inheritance case? So amazingly enough, Moshe Rabbeinu was unable to answer this question himself, and so he had to bring it to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This was his punishment. He was arrogant in saying, whatever is complicated, bring it to me. And so when a complicated case came up, what happened? He was unable to answer it, and they had to take it to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Maskeh for Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, no. Nachman Yitzchak says that's not what happened. Miksev va'ashmi echam. Does the pasuk say, and I will hear you? Rather, no, ushematev. It says, I will hear it, which indicates ultimately, again, igamir na gamir. Moshe Rabbeinu was saying like this, if you have a complicated issue, bring it to me. I'll listen to it. If I know how to adjudicate it, I'll give you an answer. Ve'im lo, azilna ve'gamerna. And if not, I will go and learn and answer you. They will say, by the way, how profound is this? How profound is this? Moshe Rabbeinu said, the Gemara says, no, Moshe Rabbeinu is being arrogant. Chas v'shalom. Remember again, they will say, why doesn't it even make sense? Why doesn't it make sense that Moshe Rabbeinu is arrogant? What is the Torah's eulogy about Moshe Rabbeinu? Va'ish Moshe? Well, it's not his eulogy. It's after the episode with Miriam. With Lashon Hara. Va'ish Moshe, anav mikol adam. So how can you say about the man that the Torah calls him the most humble of all men? He was arrogant? Not true. What happened over here? Moshe was saying, Chevra, if there's a complicated situation and the judges below me can't answer it, bring it to me. If I can answer it, I'll answer it. If I can't answer it, I'll research it and I will find the answer to you. I will say, by the way, such a profound Gemara. What does Moshe Rabbeinu saying? What do you do in life when you are confounded by an issue for which you do not have an answer? And what's the answer? Go for number one. Be brave enough to acknowledge that you don't know. Teach your tongue to say I don't know. And then number two, go and figure it out. The way to deal with life problems is not to throw your hands up in the air and say, I can't do it. But rather it's to say, okay, right now I can't do it. Right now I don't know it. And let me go ahead, roll my sleeves up, and try to figure out an answer. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu did. They come to him with a question, you don't know what the answer is, let me go figure it out. You have a life problem, you have a life situation, you have a life challenge, you don't know what to do. It is so easy just to be like a deer in headlights. Throw your hands up and say, I don't know what to do. No. Roll your sleeves up and go and figure it out. Ela Kedisanya. So let's say, now, rather, what happened with Benos Tzlafchad is incredible. So in reality, the section of Benos Tzlafchad, of inheritance law, should have been written by Moshe Rabbeinu. Ela shezachu Benos Tzlafchad v'nechtav al yadan. Rather, I will say again, it's not the pshat. So what happened? The daughters of Tzlafchad were very meritorious. Why were they meritorious? Number one, because they had a profound love of Eretz Yisrael, and they did not want to lose their father's portion, Eretz Yisrael. So they had a profound love of Eretz Yisrael, that's why they wanted their portion. And furthermore, they were obviously incredibly righteous because they wanted to do whatever was right in the eyes of halacha. Because of their righteousness and personal piety, so the section was written through them, and not through Moshe Rabbeinu, but nothing has to do with Moshe Rabbeinu's arrogance. Furthermore, Ruya Haisa Parshas Mekoshe Shenechtava Yidei Moshe Rabbeinu, Elish Neschai Mekoshe Shenechtava Al Yado. So remember again, there was the case of the Mekoshesh. The Mekoshesh was the guy who violated Shabbos publicly. No one knew what to do with him. No, right? It's actually interesting. It's one of the only two times that jail is mentioned in the Torah. Pasuk says, "Vayinichu b'mishmar kilo parash ma ya'aselo." Right? They didn't know what to do with him. It's interesting that in the judicial penal system, there's no such thing as jail, right? Because Judaism realized a very long time ago that putting people in a cage doesn't do anything to rehabilitate or help them. Right? The entire essence of punishment is to rehabilitate people. So again, what we have in halakha is a holding cell. You don't know what to do with someone, so you put them in a holding cell. So the Mekoshesh, the section of the Mekoshesh, should have been written through Moshe Rabbeinu. Ella shenis chayiv Mekoshesh v'nechtav al yado. But again, unfortunately, the Mekoshesh was chayiv, and therefore the section was written through him. Lamdecha was so beautiful to teach us a very profound lesson. Shemegalgalin chova al yidei chayiv u'zechus al yidei zakai. Baruch Hu causes good things to happen through good people and bad things to happen through bad people. So therefore again, the daughters of Tzlavcha were meritorious, were virtuous, and therefore the section of inheritance law was written through them. The Mekoshesh was chayiv, and therefore the section of Chilul Shabbos was written through him, which I will say is actually a very profound yisod, because what it also teaches us is the following idea, that sometimes in life, not the pshat that something bad happens to me, but something bad happens through me. Right? I end up causing pain to someone. I end up doing something negative. Again, nothing bad happened to me, but through me. So I will say that is cause for tremendous chashbana nefesh. Right? If I do something that ends up causing someone else hurt, I'm fine. But I was a vehicle, right? Like a delivery system, ultimately again of some type of hurt. It's important for cheshbon nefesh to introspect. Why was that hurt delivered through me? Why was that pain delivered through me? Perhaps, again, even though I'm personally fine, maybe at the end of the day it's a bit of a wake-up call to where I am personally holding in life. Incredible. So the Gemara goes weiter. The Gemara says, the pasuk says, this is a great Gemara. The pasuk says, I will command, you're right, command the judges at that time. And the pasuk says, I commanded you at that time. So in other words, who has the obligation? Remember, who is Moshe Rabbeinu talking to? Is he talking to the populace or is he talking to the judges? Which one is it? So the Gemara says as follows: Amar Belazar, Amar Bismalai, Ashar L'Tzibor Shetei Imas Dayin Alehem. It says it's so beautiful. On one hand, Moshe Rabbeinu was telling the judges respect the populace. You can't be a good judge unless you respect the people. You have to have a kavod for the people who you are adjudicating, for the people who you are judging. But on the other hand, just the opposite. So this was a command to the tzibor to have a respect for the judges. I will say, remember again, essentially, this is a very important yisod. Leadership is only effective if it has the confidence and the respect of the populace. If the populace don't respect the leadership, then the leader effectively is rendered ineffective. Is ineffective. So tzibor, if you want your leaders to be effective, vest them with confidence and give them your respect and give them your confidence. But on the other hand, ashar l'dayan sheyispol as tzibor. So we'll say this is incredible, and there's an obligation upon the dayan to tolerate the tzibor. The Bible says this is a very profound yisod. Yisbol literally needs to be so something needs to tolerate it. The Bible say, what does this mean? If your job is dealing with people, you have to be able to tolerate a tremendous amount of garbage. People are ridiculous, right? People are difficult. People are demanding. Just give me a second over here, right? People are unreasonable. Right? Everyone's problem is an emergency. Everyone's issue has to get dealt with now. Everyone is a priority, and everyone. And again, And by the way, it's true. It's true, right? It makes sense. From my perspective, my issue is the most important thing in the world. From my perspective, I need the answer. I need it now. From my perspective, I need undivided, which of course makes sense. Because as an individual, I don't know what's happening with everyone else around me. I'm focused on me. So from the dying's perspective, from the leader's perspective, it's a tidal wave of unreasonableness, right? A tidal wave of expectations which cannot be met. So you have two choices. The dying could get angry. The dying could be annoyed. The dying could be cynical and jaded about people and feel that everyone is just a jerk. Or the dying could say, you know what? People are good, but everyone's got their stuff. So of course, whenever you have your stuff is the most important thing in the world. See it for what it is. People just wanting assistance. People just wanting guidance. Granted, sometimes it comes out in all the wrong ways, but you have to be solvent. You have to be solvent. You have to be able to accept it. You have to be able to tolerate it. So I'll say it's incredible. So on one hand, the tzibor has to have a respect for the leader. Because if the tzibor doesn't respect the leader is going to be ineffective. But the leader has to also have the ability to tolerate and to deal with and to be understanding of the tzibor as well. So the Gemara says, Ad kama. So this is incredible. I will say this is so profound. How much tolerance does a leader have to have for the constituency? So Rabbi Chanan v'tim Rabbi Shabsai kasher yisa ha'omen es hayonek. The amount of patience that a mother has for her baby. By the way, if you notice, it doesn't say father, right? It says the amount of patience that a mother has for her child. That is the amount of patience that a leader has to have for his constituency. They'll say it's such an amazingly profound Gemara, right? What happens? And again, if you notice, it's not a mother for her adult child. It's not a mother for her semi-mature child. It's a mother for her nursing child. So what happens to the nursing child? Just cries. Just cries. It does nothing but cry, right? Does nothing but take. Does nothing but say, give me, give me, give me, give me. And yet what? The mother loves that child to no end. Right? The mother loves, what's fascinating is, the mother is never like, really? You need to eat again? Right? Come on, enough already, right? Go help yourself, right? The mother never says that. The love of the mother for that nursing child is an understanding because you need me and I need you, right? The mother, remember, a mother is only a mother because she has a child. So that child gives her a piece of her identity. So it's not just a pshat that the child needs the mother because without the mother, the child doesn't have food. The mother also needs the child in order to be able to be a mother. So there is this intertwined nature of the relationship. And what the Gemara is teaching over here is the leader is only him because of the constituents. And the constituents need, so there is this semi-symbiotic relationship. So therefore, again, the leader, in this case, the dayan, but it's not just dayan, it's anyone in a position of leadership, has to have the patience for the constituency like a mother has for her nursing child. And the love. It's not just the patience, I will say. The imagery is very profound over here. If the leader doesn't love his flock, he's not going to be an effective leader. It's not just enough tolerance. That's a fine, I'll tolerate you. There has to be a profound love like a mother has for her child. It's such a beautiful, beautiful Gemara. And by the way, just so you understand, this is Moshe Rabbeinu. This is Moshe Rabbeinu. Now, Moshe Rabbeinu was this to the extreme, right? Moshe Rabbeinu, people think that the greatness of Moshe Rabbeinu was that he was a Navi, he spoke to God Panam al Panim, he brought the Torah down. I don't think that's the greatest quality of Moshe Rabbeinu. I mean, that's great, don't get me wrong. The greatest quality of Moshe Rabbeinu was selfless leadership. Selfless leadership. Now, to an extreme, to the fact that he was not part of his own family, right? He was not a husband to his wife. He was not a father to his children. Lav dafka, that's to be emulated. But this idea of selfless commitment and love to the cloud, that was Moshe Rabbeinu. And Moshe Rabbeinu is saying to future generations of dayanim and leaders, Chavra, that's the key to success. That's the key to success. It's not being the greatest Talmud Chacham. I mean, for the dayan, he doesn't be the greatest Talmud Chacham. But it's love. It's love. If you have the love for the constituency, then you'll be successful. If you don't, then ultimately, again, they will not love you back. Such an incredible Gemara. In any event, so I'll say, now the Gemara goes a little bit of a different approach. The Gemara says, Ksiv ki ata tavo, uksiv ki ata tavi. This is great. Watch this. This is Moshe Rabbeinu speaking to Yoshua. right? And here he tells Yoshua two different instructions. On one hand, he says, Ki ata savo. Now this is Yoshua saying, you will come with the elders to Eretz Yisrael. Ki ata savo. Right? The pasuk is, Ata savo es ha'amazeh el ha'aretz, which means you will come with the people. So Moshe Rabbeinu says to Moshe, this is how he refers to Yoshua, you'll come with the people to Eretz Yisrael. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Ki ata savi, you will bring the people. You will bring the people, right? The truth is, it's also Moshe Rabbeinu, but it's two different Lashonos over here, right? One says you'll come with them, one says you'll bring them. So we'll say, which one is it? Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Amar Rabbi Moshe Yoshua, Ata vazkenim shebedor imoim. So Moshe Rabbeinu was, listen, this is fascinating. Moshe Rabbeinu was saying to Yoshua, I'm advising you to engage in a collaborative leadership model. Collaborative leadership model. So come with the elders. Operate as a collaborative leadership model. There's the elders, there's you. Don't rule over them. Rather, again, rule with them. Now, by the way, it's fascinating that Moshe Rabbeinu says this, right? Because Moshe Rabbeinu was a melech. He effectively was a king. But it could very well be Moshe Rabbeinu saying, listen, as the king, it wasn't as effective as it could have been. Had I had a cohort leading along with me, it would have been much better. So therefore, Yoshua, atasavo, come with the people. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Moshe, you're wrong. Yoshua, tol makel v'hak al kad kadam. No, that's not how an effective leader works. Rather, what should you do? If you want to be the leader, take the stick and hit them over the head. Now, not literal, but understanding, daber echad ladar ve'ein shnei dabarim ladar. There's one leader. Collaborative leadership models do not work. There is one leader and one leader only. Now, we'll say that. Now, what does that mean? So we know how this works in life, right? If the buck stops, like in multiple places, it stops nowhere. At the end of the day, for anything in life to be effective, whether it's a nation or a company, right? I would assume a company as well. There's got to be a leader. Now, again, that doesn't mean that person is a dictator, right? That doesn't mean that person doesn't involve other people in decision-making. But at the end of the day, there's no shared multiple seats of leadership. I will say, by the way, I want to point out, you know that this is one of the first lessons mentioned in the Torah? One of the first lessons. Where do we find this lesson? By the sun and the moon. Right? Remember, again, originally the pasuk says, Chadosh Baruch Hu created the two great luminaries, Shnei HaMa'oros HaGedolim. Then Rashi quotes the Gemara that says that the moon said to Chadosh Baruch Hu, how can you do this? Ein shtei melachim mishtamshim b'keser achos. Two kings cannot share the same crown. The moon says it doesn't work. Chadosh Baruch Hu says, you're right. Lech u'mi'et es hatzmech. Go make yourself smaller. So there's the sun, that's the Ma'or HaGadol, the large luminary, and the moon, which is the small luminary. Which I will say, so if you ever think to yourself, why is this one of the first lessons the Torah teaches us? That there are not two kings like, because we'll say, it's not just a din in like organizational or national leadership. It's a din in personal leadership. We'll say, who is responsible for your success in life? Who is responsible? So you know what most people answer? It takes a village. I'm going to tell you who's responsible for my success in life. You know, my wife has her part because she needs to really do a lot of stuff to ensure that I'm successful, right? And my parents, they have their part. And my kids, they have their part. And my friends, they have their part. And the rabbi and the rebbe and the rebbe, everybody has, right? Everybody has their part in doing different things. And let's say it's not true. Do you know who is responsible for your success in life? One person. Because there's only one CEO of your life. Only one CEO. And that's you. You're the king over your life. There is no collaborative leadership model. There's one king. There's one CEO. There's one person who is responsible for success in your life, and that is you. And that is why I will say that's one of the first lessons the Torah teaches us. It's a mantra. Two kings do not share the same crown. You are the king of your life, which means if you look in the mirror and you aren't happy with stuff and you don't like the way things are going and you know you could do better, resist the temptation to outsource your success to other people. Take the reins. You are the king. You are responsible. So therefore, again, Chadosh Baruch Hu says, Moshe, appreciate the leadership advice to Yoshua. Of collaborative leadership, it's not the way it works. Yoshua, literally take your staff, hit him on the head. Not literally, figuratively. You're the guy. You're the man. You're the man. The buck stops with you. And because the buck stops with you, you take complete responsibility. Again, doesn't mean you're a dictator. Chas v'shalom. Doesn't mean you don't engage in certain decision making in a collaborative fashion. Of course you do. But at the end of the day, the responsibility of Klal Yisrael stops at your doorstep. You and only you. Incredible Gemara. The Gemara says, there's literally only one spokesperson for a generation and not two. Tana. I will say a different topic. Tana. Zimun b'shlosha. Okay, so a little bit back to Sanhedrin. Zimun b'shlosha. So I'll say Zimun is done with three. The Gemara says, my Zimun, what is Zimun? Ilay maberkas has Zimun. If you say it's talking about like a mezuman, like benching, vatanya, Zimun or birkas, Zimun b'shlosha. I would say it doesn't work because the Brisa says quite explicitly that Zimun, which literally means summoning, right, and Birchas Zimun, which is benching, takes place at three. Maybe it's explaining it. My Zimun, what does Zimun mean? Birchas Zimun. Vatanya, that can't be why. Zimun b'shlosha, Birchas Zimun b'shlosha. I'll say again, the Brisa says quite explicitly, Zimun, a summoning is done with three, and Birchas Zimun is also done with three. Ella, my Zimun, rather, I'll say, what does Zimun mean? Azamne ledin. Very interesting. When you summon someone to a din Torah, when you summon, literally a summons, when you summon someone to Beis Din, when you summon someone to Beis Din, ultimately, again, that has to be done by a Beis Din of three. A summons has to be issued by a Beis Din of three. Kiyada Amarava, Hani Beit Lasa Daini Diyasi Va'azo Shlicha de Beidina. So listen to this. As well as this is incredible. If three judges are sitting, they want to summon Ruvain to Beis Din. And what happens? They dispatch a messenger to summon Ruvain to Beis Din. Va'amra Mipume Dechad. And let's say again the messenger comes. And he says, I hereby summon you to Beis Din in the name of Shimon Avram the Dayan. But he only summons him in the name of one judge. That is an ineffective summons. So I'll say, interestingly enough, a summons has to be issued by a court of three, and if there is an agent delivering the summons, it has to be done in the name of all three judges. So again, unless, of course, he goes ahead and he says it in the name of all of the judges. So the Gemara says, by the way, Sahani Mili, below Yom Dedina. That's only if it's a day in which the court is not in session. Aval B'Yom Dedina less than but if it's a day that the court is in session, let's say normally the courts would sit in session on Mondays and Thursdays. So if let's say again a court sends out a summons on a Thursday, so then halacha l'maisa, even if the shliach did not say it in the name of all three judges, it's still effective because everyone knows that it's a judicial day. So we'll say it's a very important halacha. So number one, our topic number one was about this basic size of Batei Din, which depends on the matter, depends on the size of the Beis Din. But Lamaisa, now we see when you issue a summons must be done by a Beis Din of three and must be delivered in the name of all three Dayanim. Incredible. Let's go weiter. Says the Gemara, Tashlumi Kefel. So back to the Gemara, we'll say. So remember again, the Mishnah said that when adjudicating cases of Kefel, right, Kefel's double payment. Ruvain steals from Shimon, and then we find the stolen object with Ruvain. So not only does Ruvain have to pay back principal, but he has to pay back double. Payback double, that is adjudicated by a Beis Din of three. Shalach le'Rav Nachman bar Rav Chisda Rav Nachman bar Yaakov. Yilam den Rabbeinu. Dinei knasas bekama. Both in general, when dealing with knas law, knas, remember again, is penalty money. How many judges do you need to adjudicate penalty law? So my coming violate. Well, I don't say what's the question. Ha'anan tana. We learned this in the Mishnah. B'shlosha. We already learned this. That you need three people for knas law. Rather, elo yochid mumcha kami violate. De'in da'in dinei knasas law. Rather, both the shaila was like this. I know the Mishnah says you need three for the halachos of knas. Here's my shaila. What about a yochid mumcha? What about an individual who's an expert? The individual as an expert is such an individual qualified as an expert, a single expert, to adjudicate knas law. So Amrle, Tinisua, we learn this, Tashlumi Kefel, Tashlumi Arba V'Chamisha, Bishlosha, right? Cases of Kefel, or cases of Arba V'Chamisha, are adjudicated by a Beis Din of three. My shlosha. What does it mean shlosha? Ilema shlosha had yotos. If ultimately, again, we're talking about three regular people, Amar avud avuch mishmei drav afilu asara ve'nei yotos psulim dinei knasos. I will say knas needs three people. But I will say, what kind of three people? This is interesting. Knas requires experts. Knas requires experts, which makes sense because knas law is a bit more nuanced, right, and requires a bit more expertise. Ela mumchin v'kamar shlosha. What do you see from here? Knas law, two halachas. Number one, knas law requires three judges, and number two, they have to be expert judges. And therefore, again, you can't use a single expert for a knas. Good, weiter. So the Gemara says, so as I say, at least today we'll begin this sugya. a Moti Shemra. Now remember again, what's Moti Shemra? Moti Shemra is Reuven marries Rachel. After the marriage, Reuven claims Rachel was not a besula. She wasn't a besula. Now essentially what Reuven is claiming, what his real claim is, that she had relations with another man after Erison. After the first stage of marriage. Now, that claim carries with it really two parts. What are the two parts? So number one is loss of ksuba. There's a financial piece to it. Number two, if there are witnesses to the fact that she went ahead and committed adultery, then what? Death penalty. Now, listen, it's important to understand let's play this out, right? Reuven comes to Reuven says, after the wedding night, my wife wasn't a besula. Okay? How exactly do you prove that? Right? So Lemaisa, we're going to see this. This is Rashi at the end of, I was going to say at the end of tomorrow's stop, but it's actually at the end of today's stop. Right? But on the days, we'll say, so we're going to see that ultimately he is vested with a certain level of credibility. And we'll stop over here for today. We'll pick up with Moshe Shemra. Sheyichyeh on Yomi shir. Great job today, everyone. Okay, but it's fine. You can see again, already tomorrow, we've got shorter dap in the next day or so. We'll catch up tomorrow, both say. Sheyichyeh, everyone.